very important to never overstep, spirit, right? We're going to be doing our prayers and sharing our songs to invite our relatives to come sit with us during this time. And the song that I'll share with everyone is it's the Eagle song. And, when it talks about, that eagle, that spirit that comes and visits us, and it's he who flies the highest, right? So I just ask, and I'll be sharing that for all of our prayers to be heard during these times. Hey, music spoke na Meader window. Ejikanu wa duya get puna. Ejikanu wa duya get puna. Yo ho, yo ho, yo honey. Yo ho, yo ho, yo honey. Hey, music spoke na Meader window. Dicto haxing hekit puna. Dicto haxing hekit puna. Yo ho, yo ho, yo honey. Yo ho, yo ho, yo honey. Wabanaki get tuna. Wabanaki get tuna. Wabanaki get tuna. Lalan, Sonoma.
Lalan, Rosie. I always
Lalan.
love listening to you sing. I could do that for 2 hours. I know you couldn't do it for 2 hours. I could though. I was asked to do the opening prayer, and I feel like I would love to be able to do it in my language, and I feel like it's really important that we speak the language when we do these prayers. So I'm gonna I'm gonna ask, in English, that we, do this in a good way, that spirit is with us. I know the participants I'm with, work really closely with spirit too, and I feel connected to them already, so I'm really excited to go on with tonight. But I'm actually going to defer to my mom quick. I'm going to smudge too, and all of you guys, if you have your smudge with you or tobacco to give your offerings, now is good time. And I'm going to defer to my mom to say a prayer in our language, because I think it's important to start with that.
Gue Bojorani Tanzi Masegos Ganangoa. Greetings from my heart to yours. My name is Jane Meader, and I am a citizen of the Wabanaki Confederacy. First of all, I am lighting this smudge and sending it your way, and also smudging myself. But as I send it your way, it's to open up that doorway to the spirit world, but it also helps us connect each other's spirits to our spirits to each other. Gisulk Kaniska Kugamijina, Asa Highway, Muwalu Uchinige Walag. Edamolek, Siawitway Winne, Ahabon Winne. Guess what's good met on the winter modahan. Akeseken o de mahatji, if tigik skijino. Even a mo, Ula Maltiwechka, Wanta Hodi, and Sedawohan, Mogignodi, Axalsudi. Abohan mo, Klaman, Kamulamonua, Ujiada, Glusawahan, Galuko, Glusawahan, Tangisi Abohan Muadida, Aktigi Maltiwechka, Atandesi Egono, Askijino. Amsid Nogama, all my relations.
Nogama.
Nogama. Well, Mom. And then so sorry, the way we're gonna run tonight, I'm kind of working a double shift, a little bit of a moderator tech, and I'll be speaking as well. But we're gonna do very similar to how we did the last series, if you were there for that one, where we're gonna do a talking circle style. So each of us is gonna have some time to share about our experiences in our life experiences, as well as our spiritual ceremonial journeys and our journeys of healing. And I'm really excited to introduce the first speaker for tonight, who's Ryan Gould. He's a wonderful young man from my home community. So he'll be starting us off, and then you'll hear from Rosie and Hannah and myself. And then after that, we're going to do a little bit of a popcorn style and then a Q&A for everybody. So I'll hand it off to Ryan now.
Thank you so much, Paulina. I really appreciate it, and everyone for joining us tonight and giving me this opportunity to share some of my experiences and some of my life story with you. So my name's Ryan Gould. I'm 37 years old, Mi'kmaq from Member 2. I'm the father of 5 beautiful daughters. I'm the owner and operator of a plumbing and heating company. I've been a journeyman plumber for 13 years, and I'm a level 3 pipe fitter. I'm also Atlantic Trades Business Seal certified, and I was amongst the first cohort of all Aboriginal journey people to complete this. So that was a big accomplishment for me. And I'm also the apprenticeship coordinator at the Mi'kmaq Economic Benefits Office. So I mentor Aboriginal apprentices along their journey to certification and just give them the support they need. And I'm also the president of the Member 2 Men's Society, which is a nonprofit group we started about 3.5 years ago in Member 2. And we provide support to Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal males of all ages, anyone in need, just whether they're struggling with addictions or anything to do with mental health or just support in general in the community. So that's been keeping me going. It's a huge part of my recovery. And I'm 3.5 years sober from a cocaine and alcohol addiction. And it was losing my daughters and, through all the traumas and addictions in my life, that really was the turning point for me. And that was my rock bottom. So that's when I dug deep and kind of reached out to, those that were around me that were always trying to love and support me the whole way. And I started to wanted to experiment with traditional healing and going to sweats and prayer and reaching out to family members. My aunt was a huge support. And so it just kind of grew from there, and seeing the I guess the need for it in our community and seeing the difference it makes in the groups, the group members in their lives and their families and our involvement in the community and doing charity and events. And so it's a huge part of my recovery now, and sharing my story as well. And that's really what I had to do, was to learn a lot about myself and my past traumas, and to to want to know the truth as to why I was making the decisions, reckless decisions in my life that would, cost me those that I love the most, being my daughters, and not being able to be in their lives. And turns out that, I kind of played it off like it was no big deal. And I just thought it was regular amongst community members or men my age. And I never really talked about it or discussed it or received any professional help for it. And I came to realize that my traumas came at a very, very early age. But I just want to mention as well, so did the introduction to the Catholic religion, as well as some spirituality. So it all kind of came at a very, very early age, which I think is important that we know that, whether it's 3 and 4 years old, 2 years old, it sticks with us for the rest of our lives. So one of my first experiences with trauma was I remember being about 3 or 4 years old, and my mother getting chased by her boyfriend, and we ran into a room, and she shut the door, and windows were being smashed with rocks. And then I was scared. She was scared. She was shaking, crying, but she started to say the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. And we just kind of held each other, and she kept praying, and it calmed me down. It calmed us down. And eventually the chaos stopped, and we were able to kind of, turn the lights on, and things kind of, went back to normal somewhat, or at least they calmed down. So that was when I kind of first got my introduction to the power of prayer, and that it was there, and that it was something that we could turn to. So, I also seen a lot of family members struggling with addiction, with detox. I remember going to visit my grandmother and my stepfather, and the struggle being there, but also the attempts at spirituality, and like drumming and the singing, and going on powwow trails, and, just traveling, and making memories, and my parents and my family trying to be sober, and trying to heal that way. And those are some of the best memories I have. They carried me throughout my life, and just always gave me something to look forward to. So there was positive in my life as well. And so I got to the age of about 11 and 12, and I kind of grew out of it, and I just kind of focused more on Christianity, and also kind of focusing on trying to make money and get some odd jobs in the community. That was when I first got my experience as in construction, doing roofs with my stepfather. So 13, 14 years old. But at this point, the addictions were still in and out. It was just, they were affecting me more. And in a sense that I was always trying to, get good grades and be a straight A student, and make these AAA hockey teams. And I always put this pressure on myself, that my entire life, to be the hero and to try to change circumstances. And that was my way of trying to end the chaos at home, and like domestic violence stuff, and was to just always try to be a better student, always try to be a better hockey player. This work ethic I carried with me till this day, which is why I like to keep very busy, but I do it in a healthy way now. I've learned to harness it. So by the age of 13, 14, I became real depressed, and it was affecting my mental health and my development as a young man. And by the age of 15, I just had enough, and I left home. It just wasn't for me. And I knew that something serious was going to happen. Some lives were going to be lost, or at least my life was going to be lost. I contemplated suicide, and just, willing to go to any extent to make this chaos and this hurt stop. So, but I internalized it a lot throughout my life. So I moved out at 15. This was when I met the mother of my children, 4 of my daughters, and we had our first. I had my first daughter, and that changed my life. That was another turning point. I knew that I really had to buckle down, and focus on my work ethic, and making money, and to provide food for her, and Pampers and stuff. And but I knew it was a chance at having a family without any chaos or abuse or traumas. So I was pretty excited about that. And I promised myself I would be in her life every day for the rest of our lives together. And I kept that promise till this day. So yeah, like, I focused on work and taking jobs, pumping gas at the market here, and kind of getting my grade 12 was really what I was focusing on. I knew that was a key to kind of getting ahead in life. So I buckled down and I got that. And so I graduated, got my grade 12. I was proud of myself. And it was just kind of like the first taste of these little goals and knowing that I am getting somewhere and just stay on this path. So after that, I was kind of up to no good experimenting with like addictions were there, but they weren't full tilt. They weren't really kind of crippling. I just kind of, drank from time to time, experimented with drugs, but nothing major. And so yeah, like I focused on being a father and really being there for my family. Again, at times struggling with relationships and being single and down and out, and addictions would really take over then. Um, so I took the trade, and that carried me right up until like about 2009, and I got my own house in Member Two. And actually, it was a few years before that. I was living in Chapel Island, and as I mentioned, addictions were in our community. A lot of hard drugs hit the community. And before moving home to Member Two, I lived in Chapel Island for a bit. And the reason I moved there was because there was a friend of mine at the time had murdered a cousin of mine, and it just kind of devastated the community. And there was just lots of blame and accusations and a lot of hurt, and I just wanted to kind of clear my mind and my heart, and that's why I went to another community to focus on my daughters. And after this murder happened, a close friend of mine, a close childhood friend of mine, I grew up with him, and he was raised by a single father. His girlfriend was involved in the murder, and he knew he wasn't going to be seeing her for a while, and he was depressed, and he struggled with mental health and receiving the right help from the doctors here and medications. And eventually he just couldn't handle it, and he took his life. So that was another trauma in my life that I'll never forget, and really kind of inspired me to keep on my journey. And not long after he committed suicide, as I mentioned, his father, he was raised by a single father. He couldn't handle it, so he took his life. I was very close with him. And yeah, so that was very devastating. And like I said, I went to Chapel Island for a bit, and I met a lot of nice people up there. I spent more time with my children though. Um, and then yeah, I eventually made my way back to Sydney and Member Two, and I got my home in Member Two. My fourth, I had two more daughters in between. One was born while living in Chapel Island, and my other daughter, Serenity. So when I moved to Member Two, that was when my fourth daughter was born, Haven. And it was a new beginning. It was a new home, and it was kind of like that, a little bit of stability. We had a permanent roof over all of our heads, and so I was really excited about that. I was further along with my trades by this point, so I was certified in the plumbing trade. That opened a lot of doors for me with employment and keeping my nose out of trouble and providing for my family. So I really focused on really my plumbing career saved my life. And as I'll mention in a bit, it destroyed my life as well. When you don't know how to handle the money, or working in Alberta, and when addictions really get a hold of you. So I continued on with the plumbing trade, and yeah, as I mentioned, I moved to Member Two, about 2014 and 15. There was a lot of arguing, and addictions were still around. The cocaine use and a more alcohol use was frequent. I decided while split up with the mother of my children that I was going to go to Alberta. I went out there, and I I took a pipe fitting job out there. which was good and bad. It provided lots of opportunities, and I was able to take my daughters to Disney World and give them things that I didn't have as a child, or that most children don't have. So I got to spoil them. But I also, was full blown into addictions by then. And it really hurt my feelings to have to leave them and go back to Alberta for the 14 days and doing this for 5 months at a time. And I came back home, and then I did this again. I took another job, did it for another 5 months. So it really just kind of tore us apart. It tore me apart, and making that money with that pain just was a recipe for disaster. And like I really did excessive amounts of cocaine, and I drank excessive amounts of alcohol. I did always try to take care of my daughters, and that was my main focus in getting another job. So that went on, and I just kind of had enough, and the job was up. So I stayed home for a bit, and I got laid off. I landed a job at the Member 2 Sports and Wellness Center. So that was a big project for about a year and a half, and it kept me home. I liked working around here on these big projects and leaving my mark in the community. Um, so yeah, I got the job, and thank you, Ish. Um, and yeah, so I was back home in Member 2, and around this time, this is when I got the news that the my children had been taken by child services from their mother. There was some issues there involving her boyfriend and some drug use, and the children were apprehended. And so I really had to, dig deep, and I had to get my addictions in order so that I can be there for them. And that's when I started to want to, be a father, and not only that, but support people struggling with mental health and addictions, and how can we become better fathers. And, the journey was so hard for me that I just kind of kept taking note. And I always wanted to make improvements and give these gifts and these tools to other men in the community. And that's when I started to want to start the Member 2 Men's Society. And yeah, so that's kind of when I put the addictions down, and I started to taking chances and taking these calculated risks and these healthy risks, and benefiting, and doing public speaking, sharing my story, traveling to other communities, encouraging other communities, encouraging their men to want to speak out and to the help they need. I think it's something that all of our men struggle with, is that we were never allowed to express our emotions and to reach out, because we would be seen as being weak or vulnerable. So we always kind of deal with things in our own manner. And so, yeah, that's what I do now, is just share my story, and I encourage other men to get healthy so that we can fulfill our role in our culture in the Mi'kmaq Nation, and protect our women and protect our families, and provide for our families, and complete the circle with support for men. I know we have all kinds of support for our elders. They're highly respected. We have lots of support for our women, and we have support for our children as well. And now it's time where I think we have support for the men, and we get them well, so that we can complete the circle and keep that balance within our families. And so yeah, that's what I do now. Is I just, I pray each day. I prayed for each and every one of you this morning. I'm just constantly trying to take care of myself first, so that I can take care of my family, and then we can get our group together when we're feeling healthy, and we take care of our community. And we really, well, we want our young men in the community to know that they have a safe place to go at any given time, whether they have, addictions issues, or mental health issues, or even just a sense of connection in this time with isolation, or with COVID. We have a 24-hour chat group that's been going for 3.5 years straight, 24/7. It's just nonstop. We're always sharing ideas, sharing support, sharing YouTube videos on addictions and therapy, and always just trying to give each other tools and support, and sharing the odd laugh and community events. And so it opened a lot of doors, and that's where we're at now, is just kind of giving back to the community and working with the elders groups, the youth chief and council, children's groups, and the women's groups, and always just trying to leave a better community, a healthier community. So I think, Ish, my time must be close to being up, is it? Okay, 2 more minutes. So I guess tonight we're trying to we mentioned before about our teachings, and that's I mentioned I reached out to my aunt, and she just kind of, each time I go to talk to her, she says, she can sense when I'm playing the victim, or I feel like I'm a victim. And so that's one thing she taught me, is to be careful of playing the victim, something that our people suffer from. It's in our DNA. It's through the trauma. So be careful on that. And then she always taught me to work on that inner child and go back to that child that I left when he was 3 or 4 years old, take him by the hand, and let's give him the love and support, and show him the life that he deserved to live. So I work on that inner child. If any of my old friends or family members is hazardous to the development of that child, or poses any risk or toxicity in the development of my inner child, I eliminate it totally from my life. And the third teaching that I took from her that changed my life was to trust that I will have and I deserve a bright future, that things are going to be brighter, and that I deserve it, and it's going to happen if I stay the course. So I work on those every day. I'm constantly monitoring my mental health, my well-being. I take myself first so that I can take care of my family. And I just love to give the tool to other men in our communities to want to get themselves well, and to know that they're never alone. There's always hope, and that we live to live purposeful, meaningful lives and have careers. So that's what I love about my apprenticeship coordinating job, is that I like to give tools to the other men, and to show them what courses to take and what steps to take to get educated, to take as many tools as we can moving forward to become better men. I want to thank you all very much for your time, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much.
It was
And
hard to
we'll-
do in 20 minutes, but I want to pass the talking stick over to Hannah Martin. And thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ish, really.
Okay, well, Willal and Ryan, I just want to take a second to thank you for sharing your story, and I feel a lot of gratitude. First of all, to share this space with you and Paulina and Rosalie and Ish and everyone who took the time tonight to tune in and listen. It's probably like one of the first times I guess I've been invited in my own territory to speak and to share about my own journey as a Mi'kmaq, and in ceremony and reclaiming our traditional teachings and lifestyle. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, Ish, Willalen, for inviting me here. I feel a great sense of privilege and honor to be able to do this. So I just wanted to say that. So Willie Vlog, Nindaluasi, Hannah Godlin Multi, Nindalewi, Tahamaguch, Mi'kma'ki, Wigi, Wegobeg, Wadig. Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Martin, and I'm from Tatamagush, or in Mi'kmaq, Dahamaguch, which means the place where the water is barred by sand. I now live in Millbrook First Nation, and I work at the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. Currently, I'm a project coordinator, and my project is to develop the Nujigalo Dohadajig Earthkeeper Network across the mainland of Nova Scotia. So essentially, it's a land guardian network that I'm developing through my project at the Confederacy. Tonight, I wanted to kind of take this time to share a little bit about, especially my journey with language. I think it's something important in my life that, you know, I have now had some experience with, and I really want to take this time to share and maybe encourage others on their journey, especially with language learning. So I guess usually I like kind of go backwards, and I tell kind of my story from, you know, where I grew up and where my journey's taken me, and then I'll probably transition into how I started on my journey with language with my Giju, or my grandmother. So yeah, I grew up in Tittabagush, which is, you know, a pretty small white town in the North Shore of Nova Scotia. I come from a mixed family. I'm Mi'kmaq on my father's side, and I'm Scottish on my mother's side. So I've always, you know, through my whole life, I lived that experience of living in two worlds and always walking in two worlds. And, you know, those of you who are, you know, mixed and have whole different, you know, multiple identities or two identities, you know, especially as Indigenous peoples, you know that this experience can be really difficult, especially growing up off reserve, growing up in non-Indigenous community, and really trying to reconnect and hold on to that identity and grow with that identity throughout our life. So that's really my experience, and that's an experience I can speak to. I now live on the reserve in my community. I live next door to my aunts and across the highway from my grandmother, which is also an incredible blessing for me because I'm so close to my family, and I get to connect more to them and to my language and my culture here in ways that I didn't when I was growing up in Tittabagush. So, you know, growing up there, it was difficult in many ways. You know, growing up in the public school system, as we know, we often don't learn a lot about the history of our own people. Even as Mi'kmaq, we don't learn that history. So for me, you know, I started to really learn about, I grew up in culture. I grew up like, you know, picking sweetgrass, and I went to, you know, community events, and was lucky to be like in the presence of my family, and to be given a lot of traditional teachings growing up. But you know, the history was something that I was never exposed to, and that I had to really dig around on my own to learn more about. You know, I didn't learn about my family's experience with Indian day school or residential school until I was a very young adult, like in my late teens. And you know, I had to learn about these things on my own. So I guess this happened kind of in my late teens. And that also kind of spurred like a curiosity for me to learn more about like, what is my role as a Mi'kmaq woman? You know, I grew up with some of my cultural teachings, but really I was at a point in my life where I was like, okay, what does this mean for me? And, you know, with learning this knowledge and learning this history, what more does that mean? What other responsibilities come with that? And so I slowly started to kind of get more interested in advocacy work and activism, and educating others about the histories that we have of colonization with residential school, with Indian day school. And, you know, my passion for educating and for, you know, educating myself and educating others grew and grew. And, you know, at the time when I was probably when you would think that I would most be wanting to stay home and be with community and continue that journey as a Mi'kmaq, to learn more about my identity and my culture. I graduated from high school, and I left the province. I left Mi'kmaq territory on a major scholarship, which brought me to Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe territory. And this was one of the most difficult points in my life for me because, again, I felt like I was at a point when it was my responsibility to learn, you know, my role as a Mi'kmaq, and here I was like leaving. And so it was a very painful time for me to leave all of that behind, especially, you know, my family, my grandmothers. You know, I had the knowledge. I knew that my grandmother was a fluent Mi'kmaq speaker. I knew that she had knowledge to give me. But here I was leaving, you know, and she was in her 80s. We still have her, and we're lucky to have her. But it was a very difficult time for me. So I left. And during, you know, my post-secondary education, I feel very fortunate because I graduated with a degree in Indigenous Studies, and so all of my professors were Indigenous. I had some amazing mentors from across Turtle Island, from many different nations, and through the degree program, I was also given permission to write a lot of my papers in using Mi'kmaq knowledge, Mi'kmaq worldview, and I also was able to fulfill an Indigenous Studies language credit through a Mi'kmaq course at Cape Breton University. So I think in some ways, I think that it was a gift because it made me even more determined and more motivated to connect to my own culture and my own identity, especially being in the presence of my Mohawk and Six Nations relatives who are very, very strong in their self-determination and their sovereignty as a nation. They really, really were a huge influence in my life in continuing this journey with, connecting more to my identity and my language and ceremony. During this time, I also had the opportunity to travel through an internship program in the summertime. I spent 3 months living in Maya Chi territory with our Maya Chi relatives in Guatemala. During my time there, I learned a lot about the genocide, and I had my eyes open to the genocide that happened to the Maya Chi people. And the similarities of colonization in Central America and Canada and the United States. And that opened my eyes to a lot, especially like nation to nation like solidarity, Indigenous nation to nation solidarity with Indigenous rights and social justice. And also learning a lot about the impact of like resource development in Indigenous communities across, on a global scale, and just the similarities that we have. So really, I had this amazing experience to spend some time there. I had the chance to spend time with our Maori relatives in Aotearoa in New Zealand, working and living there. And really the same thing, it opened my eyes to like the similarities of colonization and the impacts of intergenerational trauma in our communities. And so I had this really feeling very fortunate to have had all of these experiences in like 4 years. It couldn't have been a more jam-packed, like crazy 4 years. But meanwhile, at the back of my head, it was like, all I could think about was like my grandmother and my family back home, and the fact that I didn't grow up with my language, and there was so much that I felt had been taken from me and taken from us as a people, and that I didn't have the chance to have growing up. So when I finally did finish my university degree, in a lot of ways I felt very resentful because I felt like I should have been here spending that time with my family and my community. And I felt in a way like I almost kind of betrayed our knowledge because, I think that there's a lot of benefits to studying and going to post-secondary education in like Western institutions. But I think that was something that I really struggled with because, my grandmother was very elderly, and my whole life I wanted to learn my language. So I remember coming home, and I had applied for a master's program and gotten accepted in Ottawa. And I had really experienced burnout in university. I remember, in my 4th year, I developed a panic disorder. My mental health was really bad. I was struggling with depression and anxiety. Trying to meet these unrealistic expectations of what of trying to perform and finish university, and just complete burnout. And I was pushing myself to continue in this system, and to continue and go to get my master's. And I was at the point where like I couldn't even fathom that. Even thinking about continuing on that path was just like, I just couldn't do it, like mentally. And I remember like the night, for me, it was like in my heart, I really just wanted to learn my language. And, but the expectations for me, and like through like societal expectations, I just felt like I had to keep pushing myself to do things in this colonial world that I really, my heart didn't want to do. And I remember like the night that I decided that I was going to commit myself to learning my language. I was actually driving home from Millbrook with my dad. I had just finished university and I was trying to make the decision of whether I should go and education or whether I, you know, wanted to come home and spend that time with my grandmother and get the actual education in our language and in our culture that I really wanted to get. And I remember my dad saying to me, you know, Hannah, like that can wait, you know, that will always be there for you, but your grandmother may not, she's not going to be there for you forever. And, you know, my grandmother's 86 today, and, you know, she's very healthy, but, you know, it kind of dawned on me at that point in my life that I really had to make a serious decision about whether I was going to, you know, commit myself to that, because, you know, we're at a point in time where as young people in our communities, we have to step up and we have to take it seriously to reclaim our traditions, because our elders, we're losing them more and more every day. You know, we're losing them at a quicker pace than ever before. And I remember deciding that I was going to stay home, and there was a program through the Mi'kmaq and Amadnawe for learning Mi'kmaq. It's a master apprentice program, and so I decided that that's what I wanted to do. Someone says, Willie Ajibana to your grandmother. So yeah, so that's what I decided to do. I thought, you know, I'm at the time of my life where this is really important. I don't have a lot of time left with her or with, you know, our elders, our speakers, and I decided that that's what I was going to do. So I spent 10 months working and living and learning with my grandmother. She agreed to be my teacher, and yeah, I got to live with her for a while, and I actually didn't think that, I didn't know whether she would agree to be my teacher. I remember when I called her, I was so nervous, and, you know, I asked her and I wasn't sure if she would do it, because she did do the program with somebody else before me. And I wasn't sure if she was comfortable with it, but she agreed. And it was the best decision I ever made, to spend that time with her, to learn. And I really want to encourage other people who might be considering learning our language or learning your Indigenous language to make that decision, because I think that it's easy for us to fall into those expectations, those colonial expectations of education, of you know, the kind of work that we should be doing. But at the end of the day, you know, one of the lessons that I feel like I learned was just that I spent so much time like trying to fit into these colonial systems, and, you know, part of me now is, you know, my mindset has shifted to not spending the time or maybe as much energy trying to fix or change these colonial systems that have, you know, really oppressed us and taken so much from us for so long, and instead to put that energy into creating and recreating and revitalizing our own systems as Mi'kmaq people and as Indigenous people. And so that's one of the big lessons that I learned. I feel really blessed. I feel that it's a gift that I actually graduated university and came home and had that opportunity to learn with my grandmother. Growing up, I just assumed that learning Mi'kmaq would be impossible. You know, to me, growing up as an English speaker, an English first language speaker, to me, Mi'kmaq just sounded and felt so foreign. I didn't think that, like, to me as a kid, I was like, there's no way I'll ever learn this. Sometimes I hear my grandma speaking it, but like, there's no way that she'd ever want to teach me or want to like help me with it. But, you know, at the age of like 21, my grandma's in her 80s, and, you know, she agreed to teach me Mi'kmaq, and, you know, my mind was blown. Like, I couldn't believe that I had such a gift, you know, and from now on, you know, my lesson was just like, I cannot take for granted this time anymore with her, and any time that I have, you know, that's what I should be spending doing. And so I really want to encourage people who might be having like an internal conflict with what to do with your time, or maybe you're at a point in time with your career or your education where you're not sure what to do. But I really want to encourage people to take that leap of faith and to do something that might feel uncomfortable or against the expectations of society for you. But I feel so strongly, like I believe so strongly in our systems as Indigenous peoples, and I want to like encourage people to have that faith that there is good. It is worth investing in. And I think that when we grow up in these spaces and in these institutions that tell us that we need to go to university or college, or there's a certain path that we have to follow, I think it can be really hard for us to find that and follow that within our own communities and within our own traditional education system. So yeah, I guess that's the big thing that I wanted to share tonight, was just that just where my life took me, and how fortunate I feel for what I've been able to have through my education, but just how hard it was to accept, that's what my heart and my spirit wanted, and how hard it really is for us to take that path. And I just want to encourage everyone listening, if you're considering learning language, if you're considering starting to be more in touch, like spiritually with your traditions, with your teachings, to take that path. It does feel like a path of resistance a lot of the time. But part of what I'm really grateful for is the circle of people, especially the circle that's on this call tonight. I met all of these folks in circles of traditional teachings and ceremony. Through that time in my university career, I started to connect more to ceremony. I met folks like Rosalie and Paulina, Ish. I was taken under the wings of many of our elders and our grandmothers, our spiritual people. And, I was shown that those paths are valid and those paths are worth investing in. And I know that for a fact that our way of life, it is worth it. It is worth the investment. And, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without this circle of people that I have and the encouragement from this circle to take that path. And so, yeah, I think I'm almost out of time, but I think maybe I'll leave it there. And I just want to say Walalio and Imsit Nogama. And I look forward to hearing from, I think Rosalie is going to go next. So I pass the talking stick to Rose.
Alan, Hannah and Ryan for sharing your stories, and the same to acknowledge Paulina and Ishbel, and for all those who are working behind the scenes to provide this space for us. It's very important, like as young people. As I said in the introduction of the song, I shared my spirit name, and I come from the Otter clan, and my strength comes from the north. And so I'm very honored to be be here with you all. And I said, well, thank you for showing up, thank you for being here and spending this time with us. Oftentimes when I'm given the opportunity to speak, I'm like, I was like, what do they want to hear from like little old me? But it's those who see those gifts within us, and at times we can't see them within our own selves too. So I always have to give a big shout out for my mentors and the elders and my family who really helped shape me into the woman that I am today. My name is Rosalie LaBillois, and I'm from Ilverbar First Nation. And I wear many different hats in my, I'm also, I work for Olneweg Indigenous Communities Foundation, and I'm the youth engagement officer for the region for New Brunswick. And so That's one of the hats that I wear, and I'm also a full-time student in Listigouche, taking the Bax program from Cape Breton University, and so that's a full-time thing. And I don't know if my plate is getting a little too full. I also am in my second elected term as the co-chair of the AFN National Youth Council. And I have some other little projects on the side as well. So I think I'm going to learn a lot from Ryan and trying to balance out my life in a healthier way. But I think when it came down to being asked to share, I just thought a lot about my journey as well too. And I was like, what can I share from my journey that could help others like myself that are on this journey as well too. And I think even before my physical experience on this earth, I was called in by prayer. And I think I heard from some of our Anishinaabe relatives, that we're all given this purpose, this vision, these roles and responsibilities before we come onto this physical earth as well too. And it's through our journey we begin to learn a lot about who we are and our purpose in this life. And so at the time, my mother wasn't able to have a child. She had endometriosis, and so they really wanted a baby, right? And so they had brought that into prayer, and they had brought that into ceremonies. And so there was a lot of very important people who helped call me down from the stars in a way, right? That they helped bring me into this physical world. And I always think of the physical embodiment of those many prayers and ceremonies that my loved ones had conducted for me to be here. So I have a big purpose. I was called in for a reason, just like any of us, right? And I think when I have to acknowledge that I've had a privileged life. I grew up in a sober and drug and alcohol free home. We were surrounded by ceremonies like all the times. Like I know elders from across the Atlantic and now across the world too. And so not a lot of young people had that opportunity growing up, and it was always difficult for me because I was always made different. I was different from my peers. My life being able to hear our songs and our languages, and my mother's a fluent speaker as well too, and I had the opportunity to hear the language in our schools in Listigouche. And so there's these very important parts of my life that I always reflect upon and have to acknowledge as well too. um, and when it comes to that, like as I was sharing, like that difficulty growing up, being different, and not always having those older role models to look up to, I think I just try my best to be the person that I didn't have growing up as well. And it really makes me reflect on my role. As I mentioned before, we all have this purpose. And that when they say that when the creator gives you a vision, that he'll provide, or they'll provide everything that you need in order to fulfill that life. And I heard that teaching from one of our Anishinaabe relatives, and it really put things into perspective, that everything that I have endured in my life were just a part of my teachings and understanding my role. And and I see that my uncle is on here, and I think I have to acknowledge him as well as one of somebody who's really important, as one of my teachers as well too, and for what he has provided me and my family. And even going into that too, there's these many different hurdles and challenges, and especially as a young person, navigating this life. As right now that I see, it's like trying to walk in these two worlds. And I think I've become so busy in my everyday that I've neglected my spirit, and I it's almost like not that you forget how to pray, but you forget the importance of doing that. And I think that brings me even back to when COVID had come. that it's almost been a year now. And I think of that time. And I always joke around and say, Auntie COVID did this or then this and that. But I think I acknowledge that spirit for what it is, because in that time of hardness, it brought a lot of peace for myself. I was on the go so much, and I was really coming to that state of being burnt out too. So it was a blessing in disguise for me. But I seen amongst a lot of our community members, like across the world, we're struggling. And me and my family, we thought about it, and it's like we had that opportunity to sit with ourselves in ceremony, like whether you're out fasting or for our sun dancers, like they spent that time to really dive deep within themselves. And I think during COVID, a lot of our relatives struggled with that, because our lives are so busy. There's so many distractions all the time. We never have to think about ourselves, eh? And sometimes when you sit with that, you may not like what you see, and that's something that's hard to deal with. So I think those ceremonies that we were always going to, they were preparing us for something, and we didn't know what, but we could see how that work we put into it, how it helped us during these hard times. And even right now, when I was thinking of it, like I always think about the lodge. I had the opportunity to go work out in Saggy in Manitoba with Dave Grishane and many amazing elders. I got to live there 6 months, being totally immersed in our Anishinaabe teachings. And that brings me back to those stories of creation and those migration stories. And I used to ponder all the time and really sit with that, like our communities have become so my dad will say like that, culturally bankrupt. Us on the East Coast, being like settlers coming upon our lands, and we're first contact. I often thought, and I pitied our people. I was like, we have lost our ways. We've lost that sense of who we are. And then when it started coming back to me, like I heard stories of many Anishinaabes and Middays when they had come back to the East Coast, and they were saying it's nice to be home again. And I was like, what do you mean? And the story goes that when our people had prophesied what was coming, and in order to protect ourselves, we sent our medicine people, our powerful ones out west, to protect ourselves. And how the Anishinaabe see that too is it's time for those to come back home. They understand that they have a responsibility to come and share that wealth with us once again. And so when I was called to go work out and going to work out at the Turtle Lodge, I remember I was down in Halifax, and Jane Meader was there, and I got the call from Sabina, and she's like, "We want you to come work with us." And I was like, "Oh my God, like, what do you mean?" Like, and they had received some funding to hire 8 young people to come work with their knowledge keepers and their lodge. And I was so baffled at the time. And I told Jane, I was like, "Jane, what do I do?" I was down in Halifax. So I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'd have to leave within the next 2 weeks. And I didn't know at the time, but Jane already knew what was what was coming. She already had that knowledge of me being asked, and she was there to kind of just sit with me during that time. And so when I had accepted that, and it was probably one of the best experiences that I had in my life. And to be with like-minded people, and to be able to be accepted for who I was, like without a doubt. I never had to once describe who I was. They knew that, and they had that space for me to, like, they nurtured me and allowed me to grow into who I was in every way. And so when I think of these times, I often yearn for those spaces again. I yearn to go back to those places where I felt so loved and so appreciated. And but I often want to go back, but I think that those experiences that I had in my life were there for a reason. You know, I was there to experience and understand that spirit and help to bring it back home. You know, and we have plentiful of knowledge keepers, of elders, of very gifted people within our area. And you know, and there's been a lot of talks of bringing home a lodge like so, and I think it's something that I would like to see within my lifetime on this earth. You know, and so and that also brings me back to in thinking about you know, those times I've yearned for those faces. And my friend just recently reminded me, he's like, you know what, Rose, he's like ceremony is everywhere. Ceremony is life in itself. And it's like we become so accustomed that it's these physical spaces that it's where we could gather. And it even reminds me of one of the teachings my uncle had shared with me during one of my fasts. He's like, you know what, you don't need like a pipe to pray. You know, all you need is just your tobacco and being able to give that offering in yourself. And I think that, you know, that message is that how I interpret that too now, looking at myself, is and everybody here, that we're all gifted people within ourselves. We don't need these tools you know, to allow our prayers to be heard. You know, and I think of that quote, what Ryan said, you know, that life that we deserve. You know, we're all worthy of this. We're all worthy of ceremony. It doesn't matter of where you come from or what you're doing. You know, we're all worthy and deserving of that love and that sacredness and that safety of our ceremonies and those teachings that could help guide us, you know, on our journeys. You know, so there's the little things that I've been seeing and manifesting within my own life and seeing how things come to be, and that it's always going to be like an ongoing journey as well too. You know, and some of those struggles as well as being a young person, it's like that. My mom always said it's a lonely path, you know. And I felt that, you know, in university, seeing my friends going out and partying, and you know, and understanding that my life wasn't destined for that, and I have to protect myself too, and stay in line with my teachings. And you know, I struggled too in university. I was like, I don't want to be here. I was like, same as what Hannah said, you know, I was like, our elders are passing away, and our languages, our language keepers, knowledge keepers, you know, there was a huge urgency that I felt. And, you know, so when I had left, I got this opportunity to go sail. And I sailed from Halifax to Le Havre, France, on a tall ship back in, I think it was 2017. And I think like that was like one of the craziest things I've done, but it was such a catalyst in my life. You know, when I came home, I myself too was accepted into the language program. And you know, and even before that, we were involved in some ceremonies, and some gifts were shared with our family, and they really flipped our lives around, you know, for the good. And so I could see how those tools, those medicines that have helped me along the way. And you know, I've seen many beautiful parts of the world and many beautiful people as well. You know, after working out in Sagin, I got the opportunity to go on an internship in New Zealand for 4 months, and living with our Māori relatives too, and being totally immersed within their lives and their lifestyle and ceremonies and traditions. And just to be around their language was like the most beautiful thing. Like their songs are, you know, really, you know, they really touch you in your heart too. You know, so when I look of all of that, it's a privileged life, but with that privilege comes a lot of responsibility too. You know, these things, they say these gifts aren't gifts if they're not shared, eh? You know, so we have that responsibility. You know, when our people are in need, we have to show up. You know, we're no cultural police, and you know, that's not our job. It's not for anyone, for me to deny that from anybody, because I'm not the gift. This gift carries me. I'm merely just that portal, you know. And so there's certain things that my stories are going back and forth, but they kind of all have really um, really good things to learn from. I learn from myself every day, all the time. There's always something new. And I think, just creating those safe spaces for our relatives so that they feel that they're welcomed at any time. I think there's a big shift within this era, within our young people. Um, Many of us, we had talked last week and we talked about, that stigma that when it comes to, whether it's mental health or addictions, and, a lot of our people don't feel worthy when they come into these spaces. They don't feel that they belong, but that's not true. I think our elders, those ones who have come before us, they had to do very strict protocols in order to protect the integrity of our way of life, but now, and that was a survival tactic. And I think now I want to see us move into that phase of thriving, everybody, being everybody allowed to have access to that, and meeting people where they're at is the most important thing too. um, so I think I think I have 2 minutes left, I believe, and I'll try to sum that up in the best way that I can. When it comes to our personal gifts, I think when I think if Creator would have showed me my gifts right away, I would have ran away. And so I think that's why in these little tidbits that they're showing me my gifts, and how I'll be an aid to our people. So I think it's just trusting in that journey of whatever it is. If you really want something, you'll overcome those hurdles, those obstacles that are put in place, because it's a test of your will. It's a test of your discipline. So it's just, I think that little message is just to trust whatever it is. We're not alone in this. And I think just to express myself in that way, if anybody ever needs anything, I'm on Facebook as well. They don't be shy. I think, it's better to have that support, and, know that you're never alone. So, Walalio, Imsinogma. And I think I have to pass it to Paulina.
Thank you so much, Rosie. I just love you. I love hearing your story. And I just want to thank all three of you guys again, because really, having to go last, it's kind of interesting. While you guys are talking, I was thinking about how my story really intertwines with all of your guys's, and where you learned in different ways. So I originally, I'm from the traditional lands of Wabanaki. I grew up in Number Two First Nation. So that's my connection to Ryan. We're from the same community. So a lot of um, our traumas, in terms of the things that have happened within our own community, are very closely related. And even with the men's group that he runs now, I love it, and I have so much respect and admiration for him, and the work that those men do. Because for those of you who don't know me well and don't know my story, in our community, there really only has been a couple murders in my lifetime, and one was Ryan was talking about, within his family, and then the other was my father, who was killed by a friend of his. Um, and it was real. I know it was brutal. It was violent, and fueled by alcohol and addiction and anger. And I know that. And it was when I was young. It happened in 1996. But that experience was so formative for me, and a lot of that had to do with my mom's spirituality and her path and her choices, and her connection to spirit, because she talks about how, when that happened, she had a vision. Spirit came to her and told her, you have two choices here with what to do. You can choose to be angry and resentful and hold on to this feeling. And that's going to, what that's going to do is that's going to destroy your kids. You're going to pass that on to them and continue that trauma. Or you can choose to forgive for your healing and for your children's healing. And so, obviously with me being here, she chose the latter. And I am so grateful for her for that every day. She chose to forgive my father's killer. And we are close to this family because you know how Native communities are, right? Like the sister of the man who killed my father is actually my godmother and one of my mom's best friends. So we're really close to their family. So it was difficult for everyone. And the biggest lesson about that forgiveness that she taught me as a young child was, it's not for the forgiven, it's for the forgiver. It's for your own healing, it's for your own strength. And I really didn't realize until I got older into young adulthood how much those messages meant to me and how they changed the person that I am. When we were little, when this happened, we went over to the home of my dad's killer. He had a little girl that was close to my age, so we went to their home. We brought gifts, and we sat and we talked with them. And my little sister was only 3, but she had this conversation with this little girl, 7 or 8 at the time, and told her, because my mom said she had been praying and trying to figure out how to say this, how is she going to deal with this? This is such a heavy topic to talk about with 3 little girls. And we went over there, and I guess we were sitting in front of the picture window on a table. And my little sister, she just said hi in the chat. And her name is Sinead. And she sat, the 3 of us sat on this table, and I guess my mom and this little girl's mom were sitting back watching us. And my little sister brought it up, and she asked this little girl, she said, "Your dad killed our dad, eh?" And she goes, "Yeah." Um, and Sinead asked her, "So where is he?" And she told Sinead, "Well, he's in jail." Um, and then Sinead, said, "I'm sorry." And she told her, "We know you miss your dad because we miss ours." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. It was done. It was acknowledged. It was done in a loving, respectful way. And that's, a lot of my mom talks about, like spirit works through us. And especially with kids, like with the teachings I've learned, we talk about how that spirit is the strongest in the first 7 and the last 7 years of your life. And I also think my little sister is just one of those people that's extra in tune with that spirit because she's never known any other life. She was so little. She was a toddler when my mom started following this way of life closely. She always carried teaching. Her first language is Mi'kmaq. She always had some of it, um, as I say, but when we were young, just after my dad died, we connected with teachers, ceremonial teachers in Six Nations. So I would say that's where my connection to Hannah's learning journey comes in. Our first teachers in ceremony were Mohawk women from Six Nations in the area that Hannah did her post-secondary in. And so I was really fortunate after that to grow up in ceremony. Since the time I was 6 years old, it's almost 25 years. I will be 31 this year, so it's been a long time. But I know that I had a lot of privilege in growing up that way, and with those teachings and surrounded by those people. And that journey also led me to the Turtle Lodge to learn with Dave Crushane, and Sabina, who Rosie was talking about, is my adopted sister now. Where I'm really close to them too, so it's kind of funny. And also my mom and Rosie's mom have been friends for a long, long, long time. But my story kind of interweaves with all of theirs, and I just sort of love that. Well, I was listening to them talk because, you know, to me, one of the most amazing things I've kind of learned in terms of inspirational stuff with spirit and with healing is my friend Jacob Gale talks about this concept of a dream catcher generation. And I like to think that's where we are. That's who we are. We are here to filter out the bad stuff, to try to stop that cycle of abuse and that cycle of trauma, because we all come from homes with those histories. Even Rosie saying she was lucky enough to grow up with both her parents in a sober home, but that those traumas still go through her family too. They're in all of us as Indigenous people. None of us have been untouched by addiction or murder or suicide, missing family members, um, abuse, and residential schools, 60 scoop, Indian day schools. These are things that we all have in common to some capacity. So I love that idea of that dream catcher generation, and I like to think of these guys as strands in that web with me, because that's what we're doing. We're acknowledging that hurt. We know that it's there, but we're taking our experiences and not passing that on to our kids. Like the other day I was doing a presentation with my mom, and I was talking about that with my older siblings too. My dad was one of the kids in care in the 60s. He was part of that. My mom went to Indian day school, and my dad's mom and his stepfather were both residential school survivors, and because of their trauma, that carried into childhood abuse for my father. And my father, as an adult, was an addict because of that. Actually, even as young too, as a teen, he was an addict as well. But he carried that alcoholism into his life, and even after, he was sober for a bit, and then things happened the way he did, and he started drinking again, and then it ended in him dying because of that. And so but he also, because of the abuse he had and he carried, he was also abusive to my older siblings. So he continued that cycle of abuse. And so I love the hope in that, in the idea that we can stop these cycles, and teach people and be better, because I look at my siblings and they're some of the best parents I've ever seen. My older sister is the most gentle mom, which if you knew us when we were little, me and my little sister, we were terrors, and she was not quite as gentle with us. But she's the best mom to her two little girls. She has two young girls, and they're both beautiful, very well loved. and and my other brother, who actually took the brunt of my dad's physical abuse, he is he's a new dad. His baby's only 8 months old, and he is the sweetest, kindest, most gentle person I've ever met. And as a dad, he's 10 times that. He's awesome and loving and so beautiful, and that little girl is his entire world. Um, and I'm so proud of them. That's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. I want to be able to have my family and take care of them, and make sure and protect them for what I can. And I really appreciate that with all of these guys and all of their stories. They're doing that work, they're putting in that work, so their children don't have to work as hard to heal. um, and I personally, I do a lot of work with like feminine leadership and ceremonies. So I'm so grateful to have Ryan talk about men's healing, because I don't think it's something we talk about enough. Because again, he was talking about how people are so, we're taught to really internalize all of that, and especially our men are especially taught to internalize that, which is sad, because that's not our ways. We're okay with people having emotions and feelings. Like, we know that's normal. Like, we have always had these, we have ceremonies for letting go, we have ceremonies for those kinds of healing, with like emotional and mental healing as well. And that's something we've lost along the way to protect ourselves. Indigenous people are known to be stoic, and there's actual studies now, some conducted by the Children's Hospital here, in the city that I live in, about how we downplay our pain. We could have like, children is who they studied mostly, but two kids could come in with the exact same injury, and the non-native child will say, yeah, my pain's like a 7 if they were rated on 1 to 10, and the native kid will tell you that it's a 4 or 5, because we're taught to downplay what's happening to us, and that's a coping mechanism that we've learned through this intergenerational trauma. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, and try to work through it. And something that I love and I am so proud of, with the especially with the work that Ryan does, is the man who killed my father, came out of jail when I was finishing high school, um, and I was never angry. I've never been angry towards him. I dealt with all those feelings when I was really young, but I recently had heard about the work that he was doing, um, on himself, and I was moved to tears the first time I talked about it. I burst out crying. It was in a in a sharing circle that we do. It's like a women's healing circle. But I was told about his journey in sobriety and healing, and it felt so good. I felt this weight off my spirit just go, and and then I started laughing, because I was like, what kind of person? Like, it's so funny. It was like, it's so ridiculous to think I'm so happy for my dad's murderer, but I really am. I love that he's healing. I'm so proud and happy about that, because it's like Rosie said too, we're all entitled to that. He made mistakes, he did stupid things, he succumbed to his addictions, but it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve healing. It doesn't mean he doesn't deserve a better life. It doesn't mean that he doesn't deserve to see his family and meet his grandkids and have a future. He deserves all of those things. We all do. And so, I really love that. And um, I'm getting emotional now after joking about it. I thought laughing would stop that. But yeah, I really am. I'm proud, and I love that. And it's not like it's easy. It is work to be able to see things from that perspective. But and I try to give that back in the work that I do in ceremony by making it accessible. And that's what we were talking about when we had the chat last week, about how important it is to make our ceremonies and our spaces accessible to people, because we did have really strict protocols before. Even growing up, I grew up with really strict protocols in ceremony, um, because it was a form of protection for us. And I think now it has more to do with intent. When people come in, if they really want healing, I'm not going to ask them, how many days have you been sober or whatever. I just, as long as their want is real and their need is real, it's like Rosie said, who am I to deny them that? I work with spirit. That's a gift that I carry, that I'm proud of, that I love. And my mom says it too. This is paraphrasing, but she says, when I get to the spirit world, um, creator's not going to ask me things like, what direction did you smudge in? Did you always wear a skirt in ceremony? Like, those are things, they're important. They are important in terms of respect and protocol, but they're not the be all end all. And I want to have an answer if creator were to ask me, so this person came to you, this was their only chance of finding spirit, this was their only chance to connect to me, and you turned them away. Why did you do that? I would never be able to answer that. So for me, it's, as long as I feel spiritually and physically safe, then I make those spaces open. to anyone who wants to be there, because it's, like my mom, when she talks about that, it could be their only chance, you know, and it's not up to us. Um, they'll answer to creator either way, whether it's sincere or not. So I just do what I can and share my gifts. So, um, and it's like, well, Rosie was talking with that too, with the hierarchy. Who am I to put myself up here? You know, part of the lessons I learned when I got my pipe was that as a pipe carrier, you actually sit down here because you need to lift up your people. You need to be part of this. You can't be up here and help them. You need to come down. And then also, like she was saying too, one of the other things I learned is, like, we're all pipe carriers. Some of us just don't have that physical tool yet, and you don't need it. It's about that intent and that spirit and that love that comes through. So, um, and oh, and the other thing I wanted to say very quickly before I know I'm wrapping up, so we can go into a little discussion. But Rosie talked about how sometimes she learns from herself in ceremony too, and that happens to me too a lot of the time. When you work with spirit, sometimes stuff comes through you and it comes out of your mouth and you're like, where did that come from? I'm not that smart. I know that I'm not. I don't know. But it is so amazing and it is so powerful, and I love that, and I think that it is important to teach our people that we all have that. We all have that connection. We all have that innate ability, and there are spaces that are safe and there are spaces that are open to you, and it's just that desire, and it's there. So I think I'm good for now, and we're gonna switch, I think, into a little popcorn style. If any of my friends here have anything to say or add, or something they forgot and remembered now after listening to everybody else talk for so long. Um, just trying to get Hannah back on our pin, but other than that, I'll open it up for you guys.
I think I'll share too a little bit, that importance of, our brothers being in these spaces as well too. And, I've been very inspired by some of those who, have become very close to me from across the country, and just being there to support them on their journey too. Um, you know, a lot of times we don't hear that these things that our men are going through, and just as we feel lonely in our own journeys, others are going through the same thing, and that their voices need to be heard too. And oftentimes, like, we hear of the many violences and a lot of these bad things that have been, um, you know that have been pushed upon our women, and there's always been that divide with our men. And many times, like, some people are like, no, I'm not gonna help them, or all these things, like, but as our role and being women, we have to be able to support them and stand by them, and help them navigate that journey. We're writing our relations, right? And we have to be there for one another, because it's we can't change the world, say, like, just I myself can't change anybody, but I could change myself, and in hopes of that can inspire other people too. And and I think that there's a very important role in standing beside our brothers, and being able to restore that balance once again. you know there's been a huge shift in a lot of times we see very powerful women, come into these spaces, and there's a lot of intimidation, right? A lot of people can be intimidated by what they carry, but it's always interpreted in the wrong ways. We're not here. There's no competition. The only competition we have is ourselves, right? So I think that I just want to acknowledge Ryan and for all our male counterparts who are on this call too, and for sharing that space with us, and that we have that open communication.
Yeah, it was very powerful. I think we all took something from each other, and just really gave us so many tools off of one another to move forward. And just, oh my God, like I only had 20 minutes. I had so much more I wanted to say, but we were limited to time. But then hearing the others speak kind of gave me time to reflect. And as certain things were mentioned, it really reflected to my story, and about kind of Rosalie shared about unlocking the gifts and what we have to do to get there. And I do believe that we are answering the prayers of our ancestors. And Paulina just mentioned too that sometimes words come out that I didn't even know were there. I don't know where this fire and this fuel came from, but my belief is that the two gifts that I've unlocked or that came to me were the gift of speaking for those that don't have a voice, and to advocate those struggling with addictions, mental health, and grief, and to give them the voice they don't have. And the other gift is, as you mentioned too, where the pipe carrier goes down to the level of those in the community that need it most. So my second gift is hearing the stories and the circumstances, and really reaching out to the people and what they have to say. So as long as I give up my addictions of the two powerful addictions of alcohol and cocaine, I believe the Creator will gift me with the gifts of speaking and hearing those that need to be heard. So I just practice that every day, and I love the life that it created. And again, about reaching out to everybody on all levels. And that was another a huge factor in getting the men's society started. And support for men was, as the addictions plagued our community, it just kept getting worse and worse. So along with my journey to get my daughters back and to create support for men, I lost two more close childhood friends, like about 6 months apart. And the first one, where we went to the funeral, and I was leaving the church with another friend, and we were just kind of talking about he wanted to change his life and get out of addictions, and we were just burying a friend that was struggling with addictions. And it was unfortunate that neither of them made it. So that kind of gave me that drive as well, and really showed me the extent of how much we need to dig deep into to go to get to the healing, whatever by any means necessary, whether it's the Catholic religion or through traditional Mi'kmaq or our traditional healing. So again, thank you everyone for sharing and having the courage to share.
Yeah, that's thank you so much, Ryan, too. I think that's such an important message, especially that last bit, is spirit is what is so important. Like as I was saying, it's about the intent, whatever way you pray, that's okay. I think it's just so crucial that we connect,
And once
so
every so often, they become really easy to pull out. Like you literally.
sorry, 1 second, I had to mute somebody that just came in. But I think we're coming into our last 15-20, so I think we're gonna cover some questions. If Hannah has any last remarks before anything else, then you can do that. And other than that, we do have a couple questions here. Do you wanna say anything before we move on, Hannah? Or are you good to go to questions?
Maybe I'll take a couple more minutes. I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah, I just wanted to, I was considering whether I wanted to share this part of my story and my truth, but I think it's important because I think, it's important for us to be vulnerable and to share our truth. And, you have all given me that courage to do that as well. And part of what I shared on our call last week when we were getting ready for this session was just part of my journey with ceremony and just the ups and downs of that. And I think everybody on the call tonight talked a lot about, sobriety and our struggles with addictions and alcohol and things like that. And just like walking that path and of ceremony and just working with spirit. And so what I shared last week was just that, for my 4 years that I was at university, I was completely sober. I decided from a really young age that I didn't want to drink alcohol, and that I wanted to be completely dedicated to that life of ceremony and spirit. And I did that for a long time. And I didn't struggle in a way that I had any addictions before that, but it was something that I really wanted to commit myself to in that journey of learning more about, just on my journey as a Mi'kmaq woman, and learning about that responsibility that I had. And, coming into that space of like being, when I mentioned earlier, being taken under the wings of so many of our elders and our ceremonial leaders and teachers, and being mentored in ceremony for so long. And, during, I guess it really started kind of for me, like I was very dedicated to that way of life. And I think it was a combination of a lot of things, like the burnout that I experienced at the end of my university career, developing like just different degrees of mental health issues, and going through toxic relationships with partners, and then even like the pandemic as well. I think all those things played a big part in this. But part of my truth is that, after being on that path for a long time, I fell off of it. And not in a really bad way, but I just think, it's been really hard for me to like continue being really disciplined on that path. And, after being on that path for so long, it can be easy to not continue on that way. And I think being disconnected from like my ceremonial relatives, like has been a big part of that too, just getting distracted. And I think, Rose, something that you said earlier really resonated with me. Like in ceremony, we had so much time to sit with ourselves, and to actually take that time, that uninterrupted time to think, am I happy with where I'm at? Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? Am I, and just being able to like sit with ourselves and sit with those truths, and I think like really in the last year, like it's been really hard for me to do that, because I find like there's just so many distractions, and I think like being in isolation as well has been very hard on me personally. But so yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for just talking about all of this the way that you do. And also just the teaching about being open to everybody who is either on that path, or maybe those of us who've fallen away from that path, but still desire, like I still have a desire to get back to that. But I know right now, like I'm going through a stage where I'm not there, but my spirit wants me to be there. My spirit, I know that that's part of my responsibility. And, I was very young when I made that decision to be sober. And I think that there's going to be a time, I'm hoping soon, that I can try to heal whatever pieces of myself I have brought me away from that way of life, because that way of life was good for me, and that way of life was healing for me. And so, like there's been a lot of things that I've been sitting with and thinking about with all this. But I think that this being a part of this panel has been important for me in that truth, and sitting with that truth with myself. And I want to say thank you for making that safe space for me to share this part of my truth, because it's not something that my ceremony circle like knows. A lot of them don't know that that's where I'm at right now. And but it's important for me to talk about that, and just to share my gratitude with you all for continuing to hold that space for those of us who might be experiencing those ups and downs, and trying to find their way back to those responsibilities, those sacred responsibilities to spirit. So yeah, Gasololo, I love you guys, and just wanted to share that before we do questions. So
Thank you, Hannah. It's so important, and it's part of what Rosie said earlier. I thought about that too. Ceremony is always coming home. There's always a space for us, when we're ready for it, it's there. Because even like Rosie said, she grew up in that, and so did I, and there's still times I was disconnected from ceremony, disconnected from spirit. And a lot of it did have to do with my mental health. There was a point in my life where I was really sick physically and mentally, and I didn't go to ceremony much. Um, but every time I did, no matter how long it had been or how physically far away I had been, when I got back to those spaces, I was home. I was safe and I was welcomed, and it just, it took me a while to be comfortable coming back because I had to feel a lot of feelings I wasn't ready to feel. But it was coming home, and that's always there for us. So we're gonna move into a couple questions while we have some time. um, if you guys want to pop them in the chat, that's cool. Or I
We
don't
had
know.
one question about what do men need to heal?
Yes, I was
I'm
just about to.
thinking Ryan, and maybe we could see if Gup has any thoughts on that, because
Yes.
I know Gup, you've talked about events that we've had and how helpful it would be for your male friends. So maybe if you want to speak to that, Gup. I don't know if you're
I'll put
there,
you on
or
the spot.
Ryan. Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, the
Gladly.
question was, what do the men need in their need to heal? So it's what can we do for them?
Our approach, or what my approach was, is just to have an open door first and foremost for anybody in any circumstances, wherever they're at in life. It didn't matter if they were like, under the influence the day before, or if they were using hard drugs. I just found that many groups that were around, they have a protocol to follow, and I just wanted to break that barrier and kind of open the door to anybody, and to let them know that they're accepted, they're loved, and that we had many supports in the community already. It's just when we give our lives a break from these addictions and traumas, then we're able to kind of accept that love and that support from the community. So really, we just kind of accept them, and we hear them out. And if they want to share anything, in their lives, another thing too is that when they're in the group, they can, while they're in the group, right away you're hearing feedback, and you're hearing, after you speak, you're hearing stories from other men that have overcome certain circumstances or situations. So we're kind of getting tips and support and guidance along the way, and you hear other stories, so you're not alone. And that's just pretty much it. We keep we have a little bite to eat, and the meetings are 2 hours long every Tuesday night for 2 hours. um, and then when the men continue coming and they start to feel better, we'll eventually have a community event lined up to raise money for charity or for the groups in the community. And that's when we start to see them get more involved and kind of find that purpose, or that reason to kind of come to the meetings, or get involved in the community. So then once they feel that sense of purpose, it grows on them, and you just slowly start to see the gradual change. But I would say first and foremost, men need to know that they're not alone, and that there is help and love and support out there. So once we give the addictions a break, we're able to actually feel and to know what we need, and to make those efforts. And yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm so inspired by your work, Ryan, and I feel that like I'm 100% on what you said. Like, it's just about, a lot of people think that, it's sometimes that um, that there's got to be something significant to say or something, but it's really just being in a company with everybody, and being able to uh, I feel like the first area is like, having that acquaintance, and reassuring that safe space, because I feel like what you said, what you mentioned earlier when you were speaking before about, a lot of people are, uh, like, you know, it's only new lately in the new meta, you know, with males being able to express their feelings. But, you know, this is just something that's just been occurred within so many years as of now. So I really feel like, well, we made a really great breakthrough with Turner Leaf Foundation. We got a new grant called Reaching Home. So we got some land, and now we're gonna go and bring back Harry Laporte's old work with Gigaway and work with as a halfway house for culture. And it's called Reaching Home. So they could, instead of taking regular halfway house, they could come over to the land that we just bought beside the river and implement culture and get back into ceremony that way. And an honor for Harry Laporte with his great work, because it was such a success with a lot of people that I knew that were in prison and came out that way. And it was just like a really great success. I also feel like another thing that I would like to try to tell with people, Men for Healing, is, you know, you're carrying a lot of baggage, and you feel like, you know, it's just you feel really alone, especially with social media, because everybody is just talking about, everybody's polishing their one side of themselves, you know, so, but nobody really, it's not really the best space to be able to express, you know, all of the hurt or pain or the guilt or even the wrongs that you did. But really, I remember talking with Rod Tremblay, who's a great mentor of mine. I remember he was mentioning that, he was saying that first he was trying to figure out, he was asking questions about colonization, and he said everybody was talking about personal problems, and then he was like, they spent a couple hours at it, and he was at home and he was feeling a little down, and he was saying like, well, we talked about colonization, but everybody was just kind of going on about their personal problems. Then he wound up having a aha moment at night, saying, oh my God, that was colonization. That was, all of these problems are a result of colonization and the ripple effect that's going on. So I feel like, and when you start understanding the mind and trying to be such an advocate of, like, you know, really dissecting and trying to analyze myself and like really questioning where these things come from, because I have like, you know, a lot of defeats too with that I carry within me. So it's like really trying to break those down and trying to get the whys out of them. And, you know, you kind of start understanding that, you know, all of the decisions that we make are a result of something that was either biased or anecdotal from what our own experiences were. So, and a lot of us happen to grow up in a community that's kind of, well, just kind of growing up and with patterns of a lot of healing that needs to be done. So a lot of mistakes are being made in the process of that. But I feel like now that we're opening up to these things, you know, it's kind of really good and healthy to first being able to open and express yourself that way. And then you realize you're not alone, you know, because social media kind of will make you think that, you know, it's just about promoting yourself. But, you know, there's a lot of people that are feeling more disconnected with that method. So I feel like being able to, for me, one of my challenges was I was either justifying my behaviors, or I was victimizing myself with my behaviors, and it was really just trying to, like, I was really not satisfied with neither of those, because I just wanted to take the responsibility of it, because I really want to be able to be open with all of my wrongs, and that way I feel like those are the best people that you could help along that path, with the people that are experiencing those, and, you know, they don't feel alone when people open up about that. So I feel like help healing for men is just, you know, what you said, Ryan, having a nice safe space and just being able to get acquainted and just make it a weekly thing the way you're doing it. And that's like building a community. Like, I always feel like when we're at gatherings, I'm like, man, I give anything to kind of abandon the colonial life and just kind of have an ongoing gathering all the time, where it doesn't have to be such an event. So I'm really hoping to collaborate with you guys on reaching that goal, because I feel like if we could create something ongoing and not so eventful, not so much of an event, but make it ongoing, where we could like, if there's like a sacred fire that's always there, so everybody can kind of always always know that there's a sacred place that's just there for them whenever they need to go there. I think that's such a dream goal that we could all, I really believe we could all reach.
Thank you. And that has been one of our, as women of First Light, one of our long-term goals is to be able to create that space. And so we did very similar, you know, when the women first started coming together 6 years ago, it was around needing to build trust in the circle first and really grounding ourselves in that unconditional love, like Rosalie talked about, where everybody is welcomed, everyone feels loved, everyone feels accepted who they are. And so for a while it was women only, and then we've been expanding it now. You know, because it does feel, and Marilyn Francis would always remind us, what about the men? We need to be working with the men too, right? And so that is one of our dreams, and don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime because I'm a bit older than you all, but I really believe you will see it in your lifetime because some young people are already having visions of what it's going to look like. And I'm just so grateful to be able to walk on this journey with you all. So I think we're at about 9 o'clock, but I'm wondering if Rosalie would close us with another song so we can come full circle. And just to let folks know that there will be more of these series too. So they'll be posted on the Women of First Light Facebook page and other pages. And there's also a lot of videos that GUP has done, which hopefully will get all up on our Facebook page now too, on different languages and cultural teachings and all those sorts of things. And I'll pass it over to Paulina.
Sorry, thank you. Oh, I forgot. I even forgot what. Oh, now I know. I'm sorry. I like messed myself up. I just wanted to thank you guys for sharing, especially Gop and Ryan talking about the men's healing, because you know that is something I know we work on too with Women of First Light. We talk about that because Marilyn Francis talks about this story from her mom, you know, about how we you know, we are matricultural. We're a matricultural people. We follow things through our moms. Our moms and our grandmothers are our first teachers. They're the ones who really raise good people until adolescence, and then you sort of move into your own spaces. But you know, part of our work in protecting and empowering our women is also protecting and empowering our men, because they've taken a lot of that on for us too, you know, because part of their responsibilities are to protect us. And so, you know, in protecting elders and women and children and two-spirited people, they take on so much. And historically, you know, talking historical trauma, they've taken on so much. So um I just you know, we are really, I would say we're matricultural, but we're really more of a egalitarian society. Men and women play equal but different and important roles in our society, in our government, in our families, everything, you know. And so we can't take care of ourselves and lift ourselves up unless we're working with all of us. You know, it has to be our men, our women, our two-spirited people, and nurturing, protecting our children, and honoring our elders that we have with us. So, you know, I at this vision years ago, and we did the Walking with Our Sisters ceremony about how when we're balanced, you know, we fly like that grandmother eagle. We have the feminine on one side, the masculine on the other. The head of the eagle, that white head, is our children, because that is our future, that is our hope. And then the tails, that beautiful white tail fan, those tail feathers are our ancestors. And our two-spirited people sit in the heart of that eagle. So we're all parts of that. And when we're balanced, we fly high and better when we have to do it together. So thank you guys so much. I felt the need to share about that teaching and that vision, and I we'll pass off to Rosie to close us out with a song. And I just wanted to tell you guys again, thank you so much. I love you all. So, Walio, Gesalu.
Well, and Paulina, for that, like, it just gave me chills because like I could visualize it, right, and I could see it. And I think, I've been given the honor to help close this session. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we called in our relatives to come join us, and we have that responsibility to send them back home in a safe way. And also for ourselves too, right? This was a very a deep conversation. We shared our tears. We were vulnerable with one another, and that may have stirred some emotions within yourself too, and that's totally fine. So I think I'll share this song by Don H. Capelin from Listigish. And this song, it talks about the whale and the turtle. And oftentimes, like when we use this in ceremony, it was told to me that this could be a song that's used during a time of grief or mourning, but I really think that this just opens up your heart and allows for that healing to come through. And so I'll be thinking of each and every one of you and asking for that song to carry everyone in their own journeys. And because that essence, that spirit is always there too, and can be called back upon. So I'll share that. Lala and Sonoma.
Thank you all. It's been good to spend this time with everybody. So we wish you all a good sleep, and we'll see you on the next Zoom.
Somebody else had asked quick about or had asked about us to speak about the Turtle Lodge. We didn't get lots of time, but I posted a link to the to info about the lodge in the chat. It's a lodge run by one of our Ojibwe teachers in Manitoba. It's where my family has gone to Sundance for years. The first time I went out that way, I was 8, and we went to Selkirk originally, but now it's farther north up in his reserve now. It's a beautiful place. It's amazing if you guys want to read up on it. But that's kind of something I know is one of Rosie's responsibilities and gifts too, is to help bring that kind of healing lodge down here, because it's an open space for ceremony. There's there's a kitchen, there's bunk beds in there, there's a big open circle area to do big ceremonies into. So it's kind of like a longhouse, but it's in the shape of a turtle from an aerial view. So that's why they call it the Turtle Lodge. But yeah, it's a really beautiful space, and I encourage anyone, if you're ever out that way, it's about an hour and a half north of Winnipeg, and it is most definitely worth checking out and spending some time with those beautiful people there.
Don't turn on the.
Thank you very
Thank
much. That
you.
was very, very, very
Yes,
incredible.
very interesting.
I have
Thank you.
goosebumps when you saying that was awesome. Your like témoignage, how you say? Testimony was just like you have a lot of courage.
Thank you.
Well, y'all.
Good night, everybody.
I want to say thank you to all these beautiful young people that spoke tonight. You make me cry. You make me proud. And I love all of you so much. And I know I've known at least 3 of you since you were really little kids. Well, Paulina, since she grew inside of me. But I mean, I've known Ryan forever. And my first meeting was with Rosie was when she was learning to walk. She was with her dad, and Hannah I met a couple of years ago, and I'm just so proud of all of you. And in listening to you tonight, it gives me hope for the future. It gives me so much hope, because when I first went to the Turtle Lodge, before I went to the Turtle Lodge, I used to think, is there hope for our people? Are we going to never have anything? Are we always going to be in a bad way? But you guys give me hope. And I know that when my time comes, I know that our people will be left in good hands with you guys. I love you. Thank you much.
Yes, so will Jane, Will Ellen. Accept you, Will Ellen.